You'd miss it, certainly, if we didn't have it.
The local news is what I like mostly, yeah.
Yeah, 40 cents.
It's a way of keeping up with the local news, and especially the coming events. We have to read it or we don't know what's going on in town.
Get it every week, of course.
Local people like to read about local news, I guess.
It's the only one in the village, and it's the one way people have of knowing what's going on in the village. And besides, it does give us, it gives the sports fans all the sports news.
There were 9 of us at home, and there was not a lot of money, and no one had a lot of money. And after I left high school, I had been coming in to help my dad. He was sick, and he died in 1938, and I took over the paper after that. And I subsequently bought it from my mother. And in 1940, I married Lillian Canning from this area, and she came and worked with me, and worked with me for many years. And during those years, we also had many babies. And fortunately, a number of them, as they grew up, came and helped us too. I remember the big hustle on Friday to get the paper printed. It was printed on Fridays then, almost all weeklies were. And there was a big hassle to get it out because there was not very much help, and we had to do a lot of things by hand. It was a lot different than today.
I was playing hockey at the Morrisburg Arena, and I remember clearly to this day, he drove me home after the game, cold winter night, very, very cold. Took pity on me. I lived in the west end of town. He lived in the east end, but he drove me home. And on the way, he asked me what I planned to do. And one thing led to another. And of course, I had worked for him some prior to that, in any event. But I was just out of the Air Force and not really doing anything. So, and not sure what I wanted to do.
He's cuckoo. The way I hired Jack McGee was I was reporting hockey games for the Ottawa Dailies. Jack was playing for the Morrisburg team, and I was in the dressing room. I used to go up to the Canadian National Station and put the story of the game on the wire. And I was talking to Jack as he was getting dressed and asked him what he was going to do. And he was just getting out of the Air Force, and he said he was thinking of going to be an undertaker, to learn to be an undertaker, an embalmer. That's the word he used, I guess. So I didn't think much of that idea. I had a friend who was an embalmer, and he wasn't doing so hot either. So I asked Jack why didn't he come down and talk to me in the morning at the shop.
I went back and worked for him following this conversation, and I had applied then at his instigation to take the School of Graphic Arts course available to veterans in Toronto, and found out that because I didn't have a year's experience working on newspapers at that time, because I just was really out of school, that I didn't qualify.
That was pretty discouraging until I thought of something.
Don't really know what happened after that, except that the people who had turned me down in Toronto for the School of Graphic Arts course suddenly changed their mind.
A few years previous to that, I had found a copy of an old paper about Mackenzie King's grandfather, William Lyon Mackenzie. And of course, anyone who knows or has read about William Lyon Mackenzie King knows about him and his grandfather and his grandmother. He had told me that if he could ever do me a favor, he would be glad to do it for getting him that paper. So I asked him if he could exert any pressure to see that Jack McGee got in Ryerson University of Technology. And the first thing, Jack McGee got a call to go back there. And he told me this. Now, I don't know this. Jack told me this. But the man up there said, "Who in the hell are you, Mackenzie King's nephew or something?"
He didn't have any particular reason to help me, but he went out of his way to do it, you know. And got me started in the right, in what I subsequently made a lifetime career of. If you look at the number of people that he started in the newspaper business, his own family, certainly his own sons.
I was in grade 1, I used to sweep the floor in old Morrisburg in the Leader office. I can remember, as my father told you, setting handset type when I was in grade 4 and 5. And when I was in grade 6, I could run the linotype over there. Well, I remember doing everything. We worked here for hours and hours. When we first changed, it was nothing to work 2 days and not have any sleep at all. But there was only 4 of us here at the time. At that time, Dad didn't know anything about the offset method or anything, so basically it was my brother Bill and Sam and myself. Well, my father's all right. Everybody says I'm too much like him, so I might incriminate myself if I tell any stories about him. Brothers are no hell sometimes. Most of the time, they're pretty good.
It works out. It's certainly, you have to work things out like you do with any business. And being his family, I think you're a little closer. Sometimes you don't spout off as much as maybe you feel like, but you have to keep things inside. But most of the time, you usually work things out quite easily. And everyone here gets along quite well, so it makes it easy. Art, he's almost like a walking book of knowledge here. He just knows just a little bit about everything. I shouldn't say that, a lot about everything. But he's involved in the production, he's involved in the writing, and certainly his experience in the trade is just invaluable to everyone on staff. And local history, if you don't want to look stuff up, most of the time if you ask him, he can just snap off the dates and things like that. So he's quite valuable.
Well, I can remember a chap, he was known all over the county. And in those days, too, your sources of information weren't always all that hot and reliable. But I knew all about this fellow. So I went uptown one day at lunchtime or something, and everyone was talking about this poor guy had dropped dead that morning. So that was big news, because the other papers had already published and we hadn't. So I come down and I writes a fine, nice obit about him, what a great guy he was and how well known he was with all the farmers in the area. Set it up and put it on the front page. Started to run the paper and somebody came in the front door. There was no one but me there. I stopped, went down, I shook hands with the guy that was supposed to be dead.
Art spends a great deal of his time printing, and he writes his editorials. We ask him for advice and occasionally for grammatical checks. He has a lot of background knowledge about the area, and if there is a story that we're doing that needs some historical background, we can ask him and he can give us several names immediately to contact. He has a very good knowledge of Morrisburg, its history, and the surrounding area. He has a wealth of names at his fingertips.
And every day I am either the first or second guy in here. And I do quit a little earlier in the afternoon. I prepare the editorial page, write their editorials, edit letters that come to the editor, edit some of the things that the girls upstairs write, and answer the questions when everybody comes to the top and says, Art, how do you spell art? How do you do this? Art, is there an apostrophe in this? I don't know where you get that semi-retired deal. Everybody keeps telling me that. I wish I was.
Have 3 children. They could get in the business, even as part-time, I guess, in the summer. Not for a few years. The oldest one's only just turned 11. But it depends what they want to do.
I had a call last week from a lady. I cut her off. I didn't go into it. But she told me that, and I know this is the truth, she said that her grandfather started the Leader, which that wasn't true. This lady said she wanted, in the worst way, to buy it back and wanted to set up a date with me to buy it. Wanted to know who owned it and who were the officers of the company. But I told her we weren't interested and she didn't have a chance.
I have a daughter who wants to take journalism, so maybe someday she'll work here too.
It's everybody's idea of what a weekly newspaper editor should be. The pipe, garrulous a little bit, good-hearted too. Really an interesting man.